A while ago I started the mastery program of the Milan Art Institute, and finally I can announce that I'm done with, no, not the whole program yet, but at least the first and probably most complicated part. So here's a little in-between review. Just to give you a little preview, the artwork you see me painting right now is the piece I put together as the final assignment for this part, but it definitely needed a lot of trials and errors before. So let's start from the beginning. For those of you who don't know the Milan Art Institute, it's an art school based in Georgia in the United States, which is led by an artist family, the Milans. They made it their mission to help aspiring artists by teaching them how to create artworks and sell them, not just through art classes on campus, but also through online art programs. And that is what I decided to sign up to. I chose to work through the mastery program, which is basically designed to be done within a year, but since everything is online, it's really just up to you. I already did an introduction video and a Q&A video about the program, so if you want to learn more about it, you can look it up by clicking those links right here. Well, this video should be focused more on the first part of the program itself, which is all about drawing and oil painting. As I said before, all videos are available online and accessible on the learning platform of the Milan Art Institute. The lessons are all divided into sections, which makes it easy to have an overview about the whole course. Through clicking on a section, you'll find all the lessons for it in one place, and marking them as completed makes it easy to track your learning progress. For each painting session there is a video, so basically every video comes with the task to paint or draw. So you'll be guided to paint the whole art piece step by step, often over a few days. The references are pre-selected on Pinterest. The link is given under every video, so you can easily choose which one you would like to paint. I found it pretty easy to follow along since the instructors give a lot of information and tips and show the whole process on a painting or drawing they create themselves. And if that is still not enough, there is a whole bunch of bonus content to most of the lessons. I checked them out pretty late when I was already done with my paintings, but they give some useful information and I'll definitely keep them in mind for the second part of the program and watch them in time. So let's dive deeper into what the lessons are about. The first part is mostly about learning the fundamental techniques that will give you the skills and help you to actually create the vision that you have in mind and put it out onto the canvas. The lessons are divided into 16 sections or weeks, which include 4 breaks and 12 learning sections. In each section there are drawing exercises which teach you about proportions, adding the correct value, and how to transfer an image correctly onto the paper or canvas. Basically, mostly they make you be prepared for the section's oil painting. So that, for example, before painting a portrait, you learn about proportions with graphites and charcoals first. And the painting lesson then goes more in depth about color theory and working with the oil mediums. For oil painting, each section comes along with a different painting method or technique, so that in the end you know several different ways how to build up a painting. I found this pretty helpful since every process will give the artwork a different kind of look and you basically can figure out which one you like the most or just feel the most effortless and fun to you, which might give you an idea of what to use for your own style later. In section 1 you'll learn about building up on a monochromatic underpainting while also getting the first impressions about how to sketch outlines and use warm and cool colors to create more depth. This knowledge about warm and cools will be deepened in section 2, where you have to paint a landscape while starting with a vibrant underpainting and using glazes and opaques to finish. And then it's already time for the first portrait while learning about plane shifts. These basically help you to figure out where the shift between different colors happens, so that your object or person, in this case, looks lively and realistic. For me, this was such a big breakthrough since with a little practice, this speeds up the process so much and also helps to loosen up your brush strokes. Even though I had hard times first, now I basically see them automatically. Section 4 is all about still lifes and alla prima. This section gave me a whole different view on still lifes. I was never a fan of them before, but even though for persons who might never include them in their original works, they can still teach you a ton, especially if you set them up yourself. Not only this lesson taught about finding the right color without overworking on a piece and paint over it again and again, but also how to play around with objects and put them into an interesting composition. And since painting from life and finding the right proportions is much harder than from reference pics, this will increase your skills to do so much faster. Even though the content was good, this was more or less the only class on composition and it just covered very common and basic information. There are so many different structures for composition and I really wish that they would have taught about it more. The program continues with learning about human proportions in section 5. Here you find different exercises to learn and practice ways how to draw the human body from references and live models. It also gives the first ideas how to implement abstract elements into an artwork. For the oil painting, it goes into a different direction, since you'll learn about the fat over lean rule, which basically allows you to work in layers with oils. But no worries, the program goes back to painting figures later. Still, this rule is a pretty important foundation if you want to work in oils and tells you about how to use which medium in which order. In section 6, you learn about perspective with the theme of cityscapes. I found myself thinking that cities are super complicated to paint and draw with all those tiny little details, so that I always already felt exhausted just thinking about painting them and never really wanted to touch it. But those lessons really broke it down. Of course, painting always needs some effort, but now I feel like with the right approach, painting cities is really not that scary to do. But here too, they just talk about the basics of perspective, which I already learned back in high school, more or less, so I wished there was a little more to it. And then we are already back at painting figures and portraits in section 7. This was quite a tricky one since it included live painting of real persons. But I also feel like this is the way you get the most out of it. They give you a lot of ways and tips how to divide the body into different parts that you can put into relation to each other and sketch it out correctly. I was always a slow painter, but this section made me realize that with the right technique, you can actually sketch someone in proportion pretty fast. All those exercises came with a pretty tough time limit, and in section 8 you are finally allowed to take more time while diving into realism. On a small scale you should draw and paint a photorealistic piece. This was a good exercise to see how far you can go with oil paints and really deepens your skills you learned from the previous lessons. After all those pretty fundamental lessons, it gets a bit more expressive in section 9, where you learn to paint like Van Gogh, or at least use the basic techniques that you used to work with. Here you learn to create artworks on a dark background and how to use colors out of the tube to create a painting. That means no mixing allowed. The colors just mix optically on the canvas. For me, it was a pretty different and interesting approach to painting and opened a whole different direction. For the drawing session, you also dive deeper into creating abstract works. In section 10, there is more figure drawing, now with foreshortening parts. This will help you to get proportions right no matter if you look on a person from above or below or any other angle. For oil painting, it's time for more alla prima and create monochromatic paintings. This will teach you that even though you use the same color area, like for example green, you can create depth and make different parts of the painting really stand out from one another. So it's all about putting color theory in practice. In section 11, you will deepen your portrait skills while sketching and painting yourself. This gave a whole different challenge since you really have to focus on the right proportions instead of what you might think about your insecurities and so on. And then there is already the last section, section 12. Here you will find some fun abstract drawing tasks which allow you to just let loose and be creative to the fullest. Those were super fun. And of course the final oil assignment. This is basically where you can combine everything that you learned and also figure out what your preferred way of painting is. I kinda chose a combination of different methods, and looking on this painting and the way until here, it just makes me realize that I actually learned and improved a ton. I already had some painting experience before I started with the program, but mostly in acrylics. So oils were a pretty new medium for me, which I always was a little afraid of. The first paintings I used to overwork them a lot so that the paint would become all smudgy and muddy. I was really missing the feeling for this medium. Now I actually feel comfortable using it and I really start loving oil paints for their characteristics. I feel like when it comes to working out proportions, I already knew a lot about the techniques, but still having someone that nails it down for you or just repeats it is always a good thing. And I think I would have never actually sat down and practiced so many different things all by myself. So even though in some parts it maybe wasn't that much new content for me, it helped me to sketch much faster and I feel that it comes much more effortless than it used to be. I feel like since there's always just one section for a different topic, sometimes the program is missing some more in-depth insight into things. But there's also the fact that it is a program designed for a year. Not only they teach about building up painting and drawing skills, but also about marketing and being successful as an artist. So it is actually not that much time to work on everything in depth. For some things I for sure wished for more content, but in general, the lessons are designed in a way that you get the basic plan with which you actually can create any artwork you like. Depending on your skill level that you have at the start, I think that some lessons can be more or less trickier. For beginners, I think that everything is explained pretty well and you can follow along pretty well, but maybe some methods would need more practice than just doing it once during working through the section. But you always have the option to practice it more, since the pace of the program is really up to yourself. For more experienced people, there might be not so much new information, but I am sure that most of the artists specialize in a certain direction. Being forced to paint objects and themes out of your comfort zone will still teach you a lot. In the end, more practice is always a good thing, right? What I find a bit sad about the program is that you don't really get feedback to your progress if you don't want to pay extra, and since there's no schedule that actually make you show up and give deadlines, it requires a lot of self-motivation, especially since practicing all these different things is making you improve a lot, but it can also feel tiring at times, since it's not necessarily something you enjoy to create. At least for me, I wasn't able to keep up with the suggested timeline of the program at all, and sometimes I wonder if I would have been faster with someone to talk to. But I also had some personal ups and downs throughout the year, which played a big part in this, I guess. But I also know from other persons taking the program that were taking their time. I think in the end it matters more that you do it in a way that works for you. It doesn't matter if you are slower or faster. Something that I really enjoy lately is that the Milan Art app is not just a platform for your art lessons, but in general a platform for artists to connect. The app itself is free, so you just have to pay for the classes. Anyways, there is the option to search for artists in your region, and another German artist happened to put together an Instagram group for the German participants of the mastery program. So even though you can't get free feedback from the Milans, there's the option to find likewise souls, connect and give each other feedback. So I found myself in a small but pretty inspiring and motivational community, and really enjoy having someone to ask questions or just talk about what I'm doing lately. So all in all, I am pretty happy with the first part of the program, even though for some things I maybe have to do some more research where I want to go more in depth about a topic, but a fact is that I am noticing a big improvement in my skills. I started the program with a few goals I hope to fulfill, and one main thing was to paint faster. Seeing this goal already getting completed makes me super happy. And with oils, I learned to work with a whole new medium, which is also a big achievement. If you want to learn more about the different section itself, I made a separate video for almost every one of them, so just check them out on my account. Next, I am gonna dive into the second part, the mixed media part, and I am already excited to let my own creativity go wild in this one. And I am looking forward to share the journey with you. Well, I hope I answered most of your questions, but if there are some left, just write them in the comments below and I will see what I can do. Well then, see you next time.
I had a dream, the sun was shining all on your face and on mine too, in our favorite place.